You know how it feels when you just know something is wrong? Like when you walk into a gas station no one seems to be at, and it just feels odd? That's how they all seemed at first, but it is getting so much worse. It started with a whole kindergartner class on a field trip. They left the elementary school in town at 9 a.m. on a Thursday. They were only going across town to a zoo and rescue. It was supposed to be a day full of petting goats and chickens, maybe feeding some animals, simple stuff. They vanished. Bus and all. Searches went on for months. It covered every news station you could possibly think of. Town was in disarray. At the time, I was 16 and helped out at a local mom-and-pop store for some spending money after school. Every day, Mr. Nelson, he was the owner, had a little TV turned on, blaring the news. Remember everyone fearing it was some kind of terrorist attack, or some loon subdued the teacher and driver and took them. Like I said, this went on for months, so long that the school year was over before they came back. It was a normal July day, just after the 4th. I was sitting behind the counter helping Mrs. Nelson sweep up when we saw what had to be every police car whiz by, headed towards the school. The news spread like wildfire. The bus had just cruised right up to the school and was unloading children. Their teacher didn't seem to realize that no one was even there. It was another month of questions. Every child, the teacher, bus driver, none of them could answer anything. They all said they went to the zoo, which they never actually reached, and had lunch and came back. Said it was the same day. They knew nothing. Everyone was so happy they came back that it kind of faded into a bad dream situation, and the town went back to normal. I didn't think it was normal. Like, what the fuck? The next time, it was an entire church. They were gone for 5 months. Searches happened, news stations, high profile, police, the whole deal. Guess what? When they all just showed up, everyone was so elated that the strangeness of it dissipated again. I thought I was going crazy. What do you mean they vanished and now just appeared, healthy, and still in church clothes? At this point, I started asking my friends what they thought. A small group of us agreed and started looking into it. Not that 17-year-olds could look into much. We went as far as talking to some of the people. They couldn't remember any of the time they were gone. Last thing was always the same. They remember being in church service and it was bright and sunny outside, and they all seemed to blink and it was dark and the middle of the night. No one seemed panicked or even concerned that it had happened. That was 2 years ago. Since then, random groups of people have vanished just to come back. Sometimes it was months, once it was the next day. They all come back odd. Then it started happening to individuals. The sheriff left out one day and didn't come back for 6 weeks. Everyone at the USPS office disappeared in the middle of the day to show up again 2 months later. My best friend went missing while playing games with me on PC, then showed up 5 days later. My parents went out for supper and came back 8 months after. It was no longer newsworthy. So many people had gone and come back that not a single soul cared anymore. I think I'm the last one. For the longest time, everyone just went about their life like normal, but something changed. Around a month ago, after keeping track, I came to the realization that I was the only person left in town who hadn't went and came back. I hadn't really talked to anyone in a long time either. The new people seemed to avoid conversation altogether. Well, I decided to start talking to everyone. I had questions. Everyone gave me odd looks as I walked through town just trying to chat with anyone. I never got a reply. I think I messed up. Here it is. The big deal. See, I've tried to call outside people for help, but no more cell signal. Hell, I tried to leave town, but every exit is blocked and we are secluded. I don't think hiking the miles it would take to get to the next town would work. I'm not all that into the great outdoors, but I'm scared. Every night the town seems to gather outside my house. They just stand there and stare. Every kid, every cop, even my parents. They just show up, stare, and are gone by morning. But last night, they were close, pressed against the windows, and some were knocking on the house. I'm terrified about what might happen tonight. When I was 6 years old, I had a friend who lived across the street, Cody. From what I remember, Cody was a weird kid. We never really talked much. Just occasionally we would play together in his backyard in the woods. We lost touch in high school. He was just too quiet, too introverted. I would occasionally speak to him, but never for long. I consider myself better than the other kids at least. I never was the kid that called him names in the hallway, or knocked his lunch tray out of his hands. After 11th grade, I never saw or heard of Cody again. Apparently he moved away to some other state, never bothering to keep in contact with anyone apparently. I didn't know him very well, so I wasn't too butthurt about him not keeping in touch. I just went about my life as though we never met. Fast forward a couple years, I was 21 years old. After graduation, I started attending college out of state, completely having forgotten about Cody, as well as the town I grew up in. That all changed one night at a local bar near my college campus. I had been sitting on a bar stool, sipping my drink, dreading my upcoming tests, wanting to try and relax on a Sunday night. The bar was mostly empty. This was pretty usual here. Around this time, all that's really left are the bums and the washed people who were stumbling out of the bar. I checked the clock hanging on the wall, 2:59 a.m. I really should have been heading back to my dorm, but some part of me decided to stay a bit longer. Sure enough, a minute or so passed, and a man who looked around my age, if not a little younger, sat next to me at the bar. I couldn't quite place a finger on it, but I knew somehow I had met this man, and just as I suspected, he held his hand out to me and flashed a knowing grin. If it isn't David Pagan, long time no see. Just then it clicked. This was Cody Johnson. It took me a moment before I slowly reached my hand out to shake his hand. Didn't think I'd be seeing you again, especially after you left without a goodbye. Cody simply shrugged and pulled his hand back. Sorry about that. I just figured nobody really wanted to keep in touch. I paused and took a moment before I sighed and looked away as I spoke. Yeah, about that. Listen, man, nobody should have treated you the way that they did. It wasn't right, and you did nothing to deserve it. I still feel bad about not saying anything. Cody was silent before he clapped a hand on my shoulder. Let's not dwell on what we can't change. Nothing good'll ever come of that, you know? He then flashed me this charming smile that had me grinning back at in return. We chatted for about half an hour before eventually Cody suggested we meet up behind the house he used to live in, just like old times, saying he'd bring a pack of beers. Of course I couldn't say no, and I agreed to meet up with him the next afternoon at his old house. The next day I attended my morning classes as usual. Then when I finished, I got into my car, turned on some Tom Jones and drove off. The drive felt shorter than it actually was, and I arrived at Cody's old house around 2:56 p.m. I could tell nobody lived in the house anymore, as the grass was overgrown and the windows had been boarded up. As I got out of my car, I glanced around and noticed that Cody hadn't parked his car anywhere, despite the fact that I wasn't early. In fact, I was a little late. I walked around the house anyway, deciding I would just wait for Cody at the spot. But all of a sudden, I heard his voice call out from the woods. Out here, David. I still couldn't get over how Cody didn't seem to have driven a car over here, but I just rationalized it as maybe Cody had parked down the street or something. So I walked into the woods behind the house, the same woods me and Cody would sometimes play in as kids. After a bit of walking, I heard Cody's voice call out again. Over here. Closer now. I walked a bit farther into the woods, then I stumbled out into an open area. I was pretty sure this was where Cody was, or at least really close to where I heard him. But as I called out his name, I heard nothing in reply. With a sigh, I walked forward a bit, looking around to see if I could see him, but that's when I saw it. Sticking out of the ground was some sort of... I crouched down to get a better look at it, and when I realized it, my heart dropped to my stomach. What was sticking out of the ground was a bone. I had watched enough movies and crime television to know that a bone shouldn't be just sticking out of the ground like that, and I made haste to call the police. Police arrived, and after digging up the area, sure enough they had found human remains. My mind was a mixture of swirling thoughts, and a part of me had a sinking feeling of who those remains belonged to. But the rational part of me clung to denial like a lifeline. But the truth came out, and those remains belonged to none other than Cody Johnson. Apparently he had been missing for years. the police believing that he probably had just run away, which was common for kids his age. But when they discovered Cody's remains behind his parents' old house, that obviously raised suspicions. The police tracked down Cody's parents, and they were found halfway across the country in Nevada. When questioned, the father demanded to speak with a lawyer present, but the mother sung like a canary. According to her, Cody's father, Gerald, had been nothing but an abusive prick. He had often beat her in front of Cody when he was just a child, and when he got older, he started hitting him too. 4 years and 5 months prior, "I'm sick of this, Dad. I'm not sticking around anymore. I'm done with your bullshit." Cody yelled as he quickly packed his bags. His mother watched him do it. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she made no move to stop him. Down the hall, Gerald was cursing up a storm, drunk as usual. Cody grabbed his backpack and stormed out of his room and down the hall, about to head downstairs when stopped by his father. Gerald slurred out angrily as he stared down at Cody, "I am your father, and you'll do as I fucking say." Cody just scoffed and pushed past him to go downstairs. "I'm going to David's house across the street. You can't stop me." Next thing Cody knew, he felt a harsh force against his back and he was falling, tumbling. He rolled and tumbled down the stairs till he reached the bottom head first, his neck snapping in an unnatural angle. To this day, I still think about the encounter with Cody in the bar, how I was too drunk to notice how the bartender had been staring at me in confusion and concern, and how Cody looked like he hadn't aged since high school. I don't consider myself a spiritual or religious man, but I know I wasn't drunk when I went into those woods, and that it was Cody's voice I had heard in those woods. All I know is that Cody would be properly buried somewhere, and that hopefully now he could be at peace and his father get what's coming. Because if what I'm thinking is correct, he has a special place in the deepest pits of hell. I was supposed to go on a date. Emily. We'd been texting for a couple weeks. Flirty, fun, stupid little inside jokes that made me feel good in a way I hadn't in a long time. She even called me cute, said she liked quiet guys. We made plans for Friday night. I shaved, actually ironed a shirt, even cleaned the inside of my car just in case we drove somewhere after. But when I texted her that afternoon to confirm, nothing came back. No response. Hours passed. Still nothing. I tried not to spiral. Maybe something came up. Maybe she lost her phone. Maybe I was just ghosted again. Happens. Still, I kept checking, over and over, like an idiot. With the evening suddenly free and nowhere to be, I figured I'd finally crawl into the attic and check the water damage above the kitchen. It'd been on my to-do list for weeks, and I needed something to do, something to feel useful. The attic was cramped, filled with old boxes and that pink cotton insulation that always makes your skin itch. I aimed my flashlight at the far end, near the exterior wall. That's when I noticed it. A section of drywall that didn't belong. It was subtle, cheaper than the rest, slightly cleaner. No seams, no screws, just a slab of board sealed with cracked yellowed caulk. I don't know why, but I started cutting it open. Something in me went still. Not curious, not anxious, just quiet. Autopilot. The blade of my box cutter slipped in easy, like the wall wanted to open. A few slices, some pressure, and the board shifted inward with a soft crack. Cold air pushed out. Behind it was a hidden room. No windows, no furniture. Just a low ceiling, raw beams, and a bare bulb dangling from a wire. It trembled in the draft I'd let in. The smell hit first. Rot, piss, copper, the kind of stink that clings to wood, seeps into the grain, and never leaves. A smell that knows. The floor was warped and stained, dark patches across the boards. Deep gouges in the planks, like someone had clawed them raw. Blood, long dried, had soaked into the slats and left them black and swollen. In the middle of the room sat a mattress, foam, yellowed, soaked through. No sheets, no blanket, just filth and restraints. Bolted into the floor joists, positioned low, fixed wide apart, exactly where a person's limbs would go if they were bent over on all fours. Like some sick kennel setup. Exposed. Vulnerable. At first, I figured it was some redneck sex dungeon left behind by the previous owner. Maybe a place to film kink videos or do meth or whatever kind of shit gets tucked away and forgotten in these old houses. I even laughed. That weird, off-key kind of laugh that means you're unsettled but pretending not to be. But I couldn't sleep that night. Not a second. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the scratches, the warped floor, the way the bulb had swayed as if something had just been there. So the next morning I went back up, told myself it was curiosity, maybe even closure. Like if I looked one more time, I'd be able to laugh it off for real and move on. I crouched beside the mattress, ran a finger along the edge. Something sharp caught my skin. I lifted the corner, peeled it back, and found it. A silver chain, thin, smudged with blood. The pendant on the end was small, oval, almost elegant. I turned it over in my palm, and there it was, in delicate curling cursive. Emily. My brain blanked, my heart stopped, and then it came back. One memory at a time, like knives being pulled out slow, dull, serrated. I drilled the restraints myself, took measurements, even knelt on the floor and mapped it out with masking tape to make sure her arms and legs would stretch just right. Bent, obedient, no room to shift, no chance to run. I told her it was a date, lit a candle, smiled when she looked confused, set a paper plate down with half a sandwich and a dog bowl full of water. She screamed when I called her baby, cried when I told her she was special, that no one else ever made me feel seen. I remembered the belt. I folded it slow, ran it between my hands like a priest threading rosary beads. When I struck her, it wasn't rage, it was careful, measured. I let the leather kiss the insides of her thighs first, the softest skin. Watched her flinch, watched the pink rise. She clenched her fists, bit her lip, wouldn't make a sound. I started whispering between each blow, told her how much I loved her, how close I felt when she cried. I made her hold eye contact. I made her say thank you. The belt welts layered like heat maps, red, then purple, then open. I licked one once, just to see her shudder. When she sagged forward, I pulled her back up by the hair and reminded her that love isn't supposed to feel safe. It's supposed to burn. When she stopped calling me sweetheart, I held her hand like I was about to propose. I kissed her palm, told her she had pianist fingers. Then I broke them, one by one. Thumb first. A hard, fast bend. Snap. Index. Slower. I watched the tendons stretch like taffy before they popped. Middle. That one fought. I had to brace her hand against the floor and lean in until the bone gave with a wet little crunch. She screamed until her throat gave out. I didn't stop. I kissed the bruises as they swelled. When she pissed herself, I didn't even speak. Just grabbed her by the ankle and dragged her to the corner. Cleaned her with a rag and cold water. Not out of kindness. I just couldn't stand her smelling like anything but me. She wasn't allowed to speak unless it was to say she loved me. I made her say it again and again until her voice cracked and the words sounded like vomit. I told her it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. One night, she stopped reacting. Didn't flinch when I unbuckled my belt. Didn't cry when I touched her. Didn't beg. Just stared at me, like I wasn't there anymore. So I picked up the hammer. The first blow cracked her teeth. The second shattered her jaw. The third buried itself in her temple and stuck. I had to pry it out like a nail. She twitched, made a sound, wet, bubbling. Her eyes rolled back but never closed. I watched her die for 7 minutes. Didn't move, didn't speak, just watched. I wrapped her in a tarp, pulled her to the old ductwork behind the wall. I remember how soft she felt, how warm. Her blood soaked into my shirt. I didn't change it for 3 days. Then I sealed it, screwed the board in, caulked the edges, buried her in insulation, layer by layer. I cleaned the mattress, replaced the bucket, swept the floor, and forgot. I forgot. I made myself forget. Went to work, ate dinner, slept in the room just beneath her corpse like nothing had ever happened. I even dated again. Told people I'd been ghosted once and it really messed with me. But the house remembered. The stink, the rot in the beams, the cold spot that never left, the walls knew, and now, so do I. Thank you guys for watching this video. Write in the comments what story you liked the most. I think second story was really frightening. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Goodbye.